Hello everybody and welcome back to Simon's Order Academy. Today we're going to be talking about Blades and Bones, a one-day event played up at the GW Championship store in Brisbane, to which I took a very sneaky Hammerhal list. So before we begin, I need to thank my lovely Patreons. There are 4 new Patreons since the last video, which is amazing. You guys keep me motivated to make this content, all of the extra videos that you see, which are me talking about cities or me doing rundowns of tournaments like this, or books or lists or things like that. It's all because of these guys. If these guys weren't around and motivating me to do it, I simply wouldn't be doing it. You'd probably get battle reports and that's it. So we'll start with Stavros. Stavros is one of Stavros the Greek, he wanted me to call him, is one of the local boys. He played at the same Blades and Bones tournament that I was at the weekend with his Ninehaunt, which painted beautifully. It's unfortunate that they're a bit average on the tabletop, but he has been repping them for a while, and kudos to him because he's a legend. Thanks, Stav. And then the other 3, so Tom Mengens, I haven't met you personally, but I follow you on the interwebs. Gary, I know Gary from early days in the WhatsApp chat for Cities of Sigmar. He jumps in and out, I think, of cities, but it's good to have you here. And then Graham, I'm not familiar with you, but thank you very much for supporting the YouTube channel. And then of course the old stalwarts, Brad, Lex, Mark and Des. I should change Mark to his proper name, but that's fine, that's his internet handle, we'll just stick with that. So thank you all, you make these videos possible and you make me motivated to produce content. So just an overview of the tournament itself. So it was a one-dayer. We're in a bit of Australia's in a bit of a weird position with COVID at the moment. With our largest city locked down for the better part of a month and probably another month or 2 to go, because they're very much not getting on top of it, which is in stark contrast to hashtag Freedom Day over in Europe, where it's like, sorry, I said Europe, not Europe, England, where they just want to let everyone die. So cool stuff. 3 rounds, one day. So the first round was First Blood, the second round was Feral Foray, and then the third round was Tectonic Interference. So the scenario-wise, I quite like First Blood and I quite like Feral Foray. Tectonic Interference I'm not a fan of because it's basically just the old shifting objectives, which is a boring scenario. It was a boring scenario for the whole of second, and then they just put it in and changed its name. So I would have much preferred to have seen it do. The reason I don't like it, I should qualify why I don't like it. The reason I don't like it is because you can't remove any of the objectives, so that just ignores one of the things from the book. But at the same time, it's completely random where the alpha objective falls, and I don't like, as much as, you know, we are playing a game that is RNG, I don't like the fact that, as you will see when we come to that battle report, if it just sits on one objective for the entire game, and it can do that, you can literally just lose based on that. So I would prefer to see this just use the score 1, score 2, score more. And I think if I run this scenario in any of my tournaments, that I will be changing the scenario to reflect that. I think that we need to be using score 1, score 2, score more in basically every single scenario. And when I get time, I've just changed jobs, so I'm super busy at the moment, but when I get time, I'm going to attempt to modify all of these scenarios that aren't using that system to using that system, so that people can have a consistent kind of tournament pack where, you know, you use the same scoring for every mission, which is, in my opinion, better and means that everybody's on the same page with every scenario. It's just less cognitive load, basically, playing in a tournament, because when you're playing 3 different scenarios that have 3 different ways of scoring, it's a little bit shit. Anyway, basically the winner was drawn using win draw loss system with a points differential breaking ties. We had 2.5 hour rounds. So my first tournament that I ran, I gave people 3 hours and 15 minutes for their rounds, because we're all learning. It's all the beginning, and like I feel like there's a lot more going on in the game at this point in time as people learn it. Holy shit, 2.5 rounds. That put pressure on. So because I play pretty fast anyway at baseline, I like to think, just because I have a good grasp of the game. And the opponents that I played on the day also had a fairly good grasp of the game, and we've all been playing for a while. And so I think that it wasn't as big a deal for me during the tournament, but there were a few new guys at the tournament, and I'm sure that there were a lot of games that didn't go past round 3, because basically the rule was, if you didn't finish, so you record your score at the end of every round as normal, If both players don't finish their turns in the subsequent round, you revert back to whatever the score was at the start of at the end of the previous round. So I don't like this. I don't like that rule either. In my tournaments, and some people don't like my system, and that's fine. You don't have to like my system, but I adjudicate results. And so if a game goes to time and you've just finished the top of turn 3, then I will stand at the table with you. I'll discuss how I see the game playing out over the next subsequent 5 turns. I get them to roll important dice rolls. So basically I streamline it. I get them to roll priorities, I get them to roll important charge rolls, and then I take averages from those combats so you don't have to roll dice. And basically this kind of system encourages slow play, and there are people in the community who will take advantage of that. Nobody at this tournament, I don't think, would take advantage of that, but the problem is that you open yourself up to that happening. So there's my rant on that. We played on the Realm of Battle boards, which weren't. It was a bit of an issue because the TO said, we're playing on Realm of Battle. It's up to you guys to block off the sides if you want to. And I would have, and I'm not paying out the tournament organizer at all. He's a great guy and we talk a lot. I would have just said to people, we're playing on the Realm of Battle boards. Take 12 inches off one of the sides. That's that's what you're playing on. And, I think most people did that anyway under their own volition because we want to play on the board size that the game is intended for. And it's not their fault that they have Realm of Battle boards from, what was it, 7th Ed Fantasy that they still want to use because they are quite pretty. But things slide around a lot. Anyway, lots of pretty terrain. So I don't have a whole lot of photos. You can have a look in the photos that are on the subsequent slides, but it was very visually appealing, and the terrain pieces are amazing, and they're all old school. Like you get the Mage Wrath thrones and the Fate Weaver dais, and I don't even know what they're called. The old terrain pieces that are really beautiful from old Warhammer. And yeah, I think that it was just everything looked good. And with painted armies, because you're using the battle ready system, with everything as it was, like it was absolutely stunning to look at on the table, and you'll probably see that in the subsequent slides with the photos on them. So this is my list. You can see the models in the background taken in my laundry. So on a board that somebody left over at my GoldCon tournament like in January, and nobody wanted to claim it, so I took it home and claimed it for my own. So we have we're playing in Hammerhal, Realm of Akshi, but that's irrelevant these days anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But I'm a fluff bunny and Hammerhal's in Akshi, so it has to be in Akshi. I mean, I guess it's technically in Gairan as well, but grand strategy was prize sorcery. So keep a wizard alive, because I had 4 wizards out of my 6 heroes, and I thought that most games, even at the end, the Celestial Hurricanum should be alive. So that was why I chose that grand strategy. And the Triumph is inspired. So +1 to wound, in my opinion, is what you should always take. So I had 3 core battalions, 2 warlords with 6 heroes, and 1 Hunters of the Heartlands. I think that given the proclivity of people to take monsters at the moment in the early 3rd edition meta, I think you want to take hunters because getting roared is actually a pretty big deal, and like getting stomped can also matter. And so I think that's why that you put your biggest blocks. I think you put in Hunters of the Heartlands, and that's what I've done in this list. My unit of 30 handgunners, my unit of 15 Vindictors, both in Hunters of the Heartlands, just in case a monster gets into them. And then with the Warlord battalions, I get additional artifacts. 2 additional artifacts in total. And so my list is 1985 out of 2000. I have 4 reinforced unit, and I have 124 wounds in total. But 12 of those are on the Frostlight Phoenix, so it's really 136. And then, as well, you've got the 5-up after save on the Celestial Hurricanum. So that's probably another 4 wounds as well. So 140 wounds, which is pretty decent, I think, for 2,000 points. So the leaders, I have 6 of them because I wanted to go double Warlord because I wanted to fit in this. Basically, the only reason why I did this was because I wanted to fit in the Assassin with the Saint's Blade because I think he's just fun. So, spoiler alert, he's not, or she's not. Sorry, it was a female assassin model from Blood Bowl that I used, but she's not actually that good. She just dies. So the first one, the general, is a Gur battle mage with the command trait Master of Magic and the Law of Cinder spell Cinder Cloud. So essentially, he is a wizard that is, when he's standing next to the Celestial Hurricanum, he gets +3 to cast. So he gets 1 from being in Gur, 1 from being in next to the Hurricanum, and then another 1 for casting. Sorry, he gets +3 when he's casting the Endless spell. So the Chronomantic Cogs. First spell that he casts every turn is the Chronomantic Cogs, and so he's on a +3 to cast with that, with a reroll just in case you roll low and you want to try and roll higher. And then his second spell is always either going to be -1 to hit, or it's going to be, sorry, the Cinder Cloud, which is units wholly within, is it 9 inches? It's either 9 or 12. Get -1 to hit. So really strong spell, especially when you're running kind of a brick like I was, trying to keep it all together in one blob, which I'm just, it's in. Sorry, I'm just trying to find exactly what it says. Laura Cinder Cloud, wholly within 9. So really strong. Really good ability, and then combos well with the Hish Battle Mage, who also has Cinder Cloud on him just in case. So he's got his Fast Protection as his War Scroll spell, which is -1 to hit, and then he's also got Cinder Cloud for the extra -1 to hit. So really good if you get Cogs off and you can cast 2 spells with him. Basically makes everything -1 to hit. The Lord Castellan is there basically just to walk around behind the Vindictors, and yeah. That's basically it, and shine his lantern on them to give them +1 save, so they go up to a 2+ armor save, which is really strong. The Anointed on Frostheart has the Arcane Tome and has the universal spell Flaming Weapon. So this is one of my favorite combos at the moment in Cities of Sigmar. Basically, he can cast Flaming Weapon on the Birdo's claws to give it damage 3 instead of damage 2, which on 8 attacks is actually really strong, and especially when you can fight twice in Hammerhal. And when he doesn't want to do Flaming Weapon, if he just wants to tank, he can cast Mystic Shield on himself. They both have low casting values. Flaming Weapons are 4 and Mystic Shield are 5. So rolling 2 dice, most of the time you should be getting them off. The question is whether or not you can opponent unbind it. But that's part of the game. If he gets Mystic Shield off on himself, he's on a 3-up ignoring Rend 1. So really strong, and then has a 4-up after save. So real good. Then there's the Celestial Hurricanum with the Celestial Battle Mage, so a staple in most lists that I make. With the Amulet of Destiny, he's basically 33% more survivable. That's how that works. And he's really good. He's got Law of Cinder, Wings of Fire, which is +1 to run and charge. And the best thing about that spell is that it's unlimited range. You just need line of sight. So really strong if I need to cast it on I can cast it on anything basically, but typical targets would be either the Anointed on Frostheart or the Vindictors, because they both tend to push out away from the Celestial Hurricanum. And then finally the Assassin with Saint's Blade. I just thought it would be fun to run her, because she jumps out of a unit at the start of the combat phase. You can place her within 3 inches of a unit when she jumps out, because there's no restrictions stopping you from doing that. So basically what the strategy is that one of the 2 Free Guild Guard units runs to within, just outside of 3 inches, and then start of the combat phase she jumps out and then fights. And she can fight twice. And what the Saint's Blade does is when you're within 6 inches of an objective, you get an extra rend, so she's 6 attacks, 3s and 3s, rend 2, and then damage 2 when within 6 inches of an objective. And then if you can also engineer it like I did in the final game, that she's fighting twice, it's actually pretty good output. And when you've got the Hurricanum nearby, she's on 2s to hit, you can use the Triumph for Inspired to give her so she can be 6 attacks, 2s and 2s, rend 2 to damage 2, fighting twice. Except what I found is that she doesn't fight twice, because she just dies when anything basically tries to hit her back. And that was my experience with her. And then finally, the rest of the list is 30 Free Guild Handgunners. So these guys I just wanted to run. I wanted to see how they went in 3rd edition. I don't think they're great. I think that for another 30 points, you just want an extra Dark Shards. And I definitely think that. And then I've got 2 units of Free Guild Guard in basically with swords and boards. One of them's a retinue. These guys, again, I know that on everything that I've talked about, I've said that you just want to take Dread Spears instead of these guys. I still agree with that. I just think I just don't have the models yet, so I'm waiting for them to be finished before I can put them on the table. And finally, the Vindictors. So I got 15 Vindictors painted up by my local painter before the tournament, which is really good turnaround compared to the 2 months that I've been waiting for shit to arrive from Poland with international shipping as it is at the moment. And those guys are really cool. For 420 points, I'm a big fan of Vindictors. With the +2 or +3 to run and charge and fly, they're really strong. They're super resilient at, 30 wounds, 420 points. So you're looking at, what is it, 14 points a wound. Can be a little bit expensive, but they've got a 3-up armor save and they do mortals on the output. And if you ever get to fight them twice, which I did once, they put out a decent amount of wounds. My dice don't like rolling 6s unless I give them to my opponent. More on that in the Nagash game. Yeah, they were solid for 420 points. I was actually quite happy with how they did. And then finally, the Chronomantic cogs. I've got 4 wizards. They all start together. The cogs basically goes down first turn, and then you dispel it and cast it as you need to the subsequent turns. And that's my list, 1985 points. So round 1, I draw one of my old War Machine buddies, Chris Eddy. So he has been, we've been playing against each other for probably the better part of a decade now. Various games. So War Machine Hordes, and now back to Age of Sigmar and Warhammers. So he was running Zench with in Eternal Conflagration. So he had a Magister on disc, a Changecaster, Fate Master, allied in Be'lakor, 2x10 horrors, and then 1x9 flamers. What a horrible fucking unit that is. So going in, I was a little bit worried, as the deployment for First Blood, if you go and have a look in your GHP, is basically little L's in the back third, the back 3 squares of the back corner 3 squares of the deployment of the entire battlefield. And this kind of benefited me. It sucks in my army, because a lot of the Allegiance abilities for Hammerhal trigger run in your territory, and you basically want to move out of your territory turn 1, which is shit, and you can't fight twice because you're never going to be in your opponent's backfield. So this is a bit of a shit scenario for Hammerhal. But it enabled me to put enough space between myself and the Flamers. And so what I did first turn was I basically cast, I must have put Mystic Shield on the Frostheart Phoenix, and then just powered him up the board, basically from his starting position, 16 inches up with I think you have +3 to run and charge, I want to say. I think you have +3 to run and charge. And basically with a reroll, got into Flamers, into 10 horrors and the 9 Flamers. So the 9 Flamers standard shot, and through, quite good dice rolling, I didn't take a single wound from the standard shoot. Sorry, from the Unleash Hell. And so that put me in a really strong position, because first turn, my opponent gives me first turn, and then basically the Frostheart Phoenix is then on, in your opponent's battle line. I know that he's going to cop a lot of firepower. I think with Mystic Shield he can survive the first turn of shooting, and so my hope is that he's at least alive until the end of my opponent's second turn, and by then my handgunners are in position, and I'm in a strong position moving on to objectives. Because basically pushing up on that left, so you can see where he is here. If I push up on the left hand side onto the objective that's there, that's kind of hiding behind the text box, but essentially I stop anything from getting onto it, which is huge. It means that I'm scoring 1, scoring 2, scoring more, and then if he wins priority turn 3, he can take away the objective. If he takes away either side objective, basically I hold them. So I'll go into some things that happened during the game. This picture is one of my favorites. So I've already basically covered the Frosty going up the left flank. This was in turn 4, and so there was a big block of Flamers that had come back with Fold Reality. So there were 9 Flamers in the middle, and I think there were 2 pinks and then 18 blues. They're not blue. I raised that issue with my opponent, and he told me to get fucked, probably fairly. So any time that he said he was bringing on blue horrors, I made him say green horrors, because I'm a nice guy. Anyway, this Free Guild Guard had taken, I think his unit had taken shots from those same horrors, and had been reduced down to 1 guy. And I said to Creddy, I'm going to Inspiring Presence him. And he said, why would you bother? It's 1 Free Guild Guard. And then what happened was that this single Free Guild Guard charged into the 9 horrors, and the 9 Flamers and the 20 horrors, and he died to an Unleash Hell from the Flamers, obviously. I think he took like 20 wounds, but that little fucking hero stopped any standard shoot happening against my Vindictors, and then my Vindictors charged in from basically the where we're looking at the picture from now, basically southeast, and they wiped those, that basically wiped those horrors, and then we're able to pile in and wipe the flamers in the next turn. So it was absolutely amazing. I won the double this turn, so the Vindictors just absolutely wiped the 9 horrors and all the flamers. That was a really good play. Be'lakor is as annoying as he always is, so he used Dark Master not on the Frostheart turn 1, which is what he probably should have done, but I don't think he was expecting me to push up as aggressively as I did, so he used it turn 2 on the Vindictors. So they were sitting on the right hand objective and basically sat there for the entirety of turn 2 and didn't do a single thing. And so, you know, but then third turn and fourth turn I could push them into the center. But a turn that your 5-inch move unit can't actually push into the center is actually pretty important. And as part of how my Frostheart was tying everything up, Be'lakor had to go onto the middle objective turn 1, which put him in range of my handgunners, which then removed him that turn. Because he didn't have a choice, basically, to cap that mid. To get any objectives points in turn 1, he had to put Be'lakor on the objective. And then I was able to remove him with spells and Herohammer shooting and handgunner shooting. And one of the other fun things that happened was that the tactic I was talking about with the assassin before, basically there was an Exalted Flamer that got summoned onto, because I had cogs, I was getting off heaps of spells and he was getting off heaps of spells as well. The Freeguild Guard on the left-hand flank ran to outside of 3 inch of an Exalted Flamer and dropped out the assassin within 3 inches. He piled in and killed it in the 1 round of combat. So, but I mean, he died immediately afterwards. But he was able to kill a single summoned Exalted Flamer worth 0 points. So that was a really good return on investment there. And so this is the end of the game picture. So we only made it to the end of turn 4, but it was a foregone conclusion by this point because I had wiped the 9 horrors and the 9 flamers and the 10 horrors, and as a result I was able to just consolidate into the center. He'd removed the right hand objective when he won priority in turn 3, so I kind of had to push into the middle, but at that point I was ahead by so many points that it didn't really make much of a difference. But this is everything kind of piling into the center just to get onto that objective and, you know, tying up horrors and, yeah, doing great work. So round 1 victory to the Cities of Sigmar. So round 2 was Feral Foray, which is basically the new Scorched Earth, but better. So I quite like Feral Foray as a scenario because you can only burn 1 objective a turn, which means that you want to get onto at least one of them by turn 3. And if you can't do that, you might be in a fairly bad position. So yeah, good scenario. I actually really like this one. So I was playing against Dodgy Dave, who you guys probably saw my battle report a few weeks ago. His Slaves to Darkness. Unfortunately, because this was a GW event and his War Shrines are 3D printed, he wasn't able to use his War Shrines, basically. That's the risk that you run, I guess, when you 3D print stuff. GW doesn't like their IP being taken away from them. And yeah, so he was playing Despoilers with a Khorne Demon Prince General. So in Despoilers, that guy gets a 5+ ward save, and he has a bubble of +1 to wound, which is really, really strong, and reroll 1 to hit, I think, as well. Like, insane. Anyway, Sorcerer Lord on Manticore, Sorcerer Lord on foot, Be'lakor. Of course he got Be'lakor. Every Chaos army should have Be'lakor. That guy's dumb, and he went down points. It's just so fucking annoying. 3x5 Knights, 1x6 Furies, and 1x10 Warriors. So takeaways from this game: Blood-Slicked Ground is horrible against any combat units. So the way that it works is that you halve your run and charge rolls. So nobody cares about halving run rolls, like it is what it is, whatever. Halving charge rolls is huge, and I had, I think, +3 to charge on my Vindictors most turns, and I still couldn't get into anything. It was such a frustrating experience. And then I won drops, and so I let Dodgy go first, and then I took turn 2. And then he won priority going into turn 2 and gave me the turn. And so when Be'lakor, he used Dark Master on the Frostheart Phoenix in my hero phase turn 1, and then obviously because of how it is worded, which again is dumb, it rolls over into turn 2. So you basically got 2 turns out of 5 that my Frostheart Phoenix was doing nothing. He was just sitting on my back objective and literally just sitting there. What it did enable me to do is play to battle tactics And so all I did was first turn was go Monstrous Takeover on the one that I think that's what I did. I did it at some point, Monstrous Takeover on the objective you're sitting on, something like that. Oracular Visions is super strong. Again, like there are a lot of things in Slaves to Darkness that just seem dumb and that seem like they slipped under the radar when they revised their rules for this edition. So yeah, there are a few interesting things. So I think that Slaves to Darkness are in a really strong position in 3rd edition. So this picture's one of my favorites. It's so good. So the big terrain piece in the middle was garrisonable because it had an intact building in it. And so what I did in my turn 2 was that turn 1 I ran all of my handgunners so that they were within 6 inches of the terrain piece, and then turn 2 they all jumped into the terrain piece. Yay! So this is I took quite a bit of time, like making sure that I put all my handgunners with their guns poking out of the portcullis and out of the doors, and I just basically put them all over this terrain piece. It was good fun. Dodgy and I always have fun games. He'd put Pitch Black on it the previous turn, which was really sad because it was basically taking up half of the board in the middle of the table. And so I jumped into the garrisoning terrain thing, and the way the garrisoning terrain rules work is that you can jump into engagement range into a garrison, which doesn't really it doesn't feel right, but you can do it. So I did it, and my 30 handgunners then pew-pewed his what are they? Knights, 5 knights. Just went bang, 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 killed them. It was really good. I was really excited about it. And what that meant was that they were no longer in combat because none of his other stuff was in 3 inches of that terrain piece, just those knights. And then what happened was the next turn, I think maybe there was one left, and then 30 guys got to bludgeon him to death with their handguns, with the butts of their handguns, which is fun. And then the next turn, when he wanted to charge in and get into that terrain piece, he had to throw in a throwaway unit because he was going to charge with his Demon Prince, his Sorcerer Lord of Manticore, and with Bellacore. And so he chucked in 5 knights first. I think there were 3 knights left at that point because the Hurricanum had been pinging them. And then, yeah, they stand and shot and killed all those knights as well. So not a bad return on investment for the handgunners. But then they died, obviously. Like, -1 hit and +1 armor save doesn't mean anything on handgunners when you're getting attacked by Khorne Demon Prince and Bellacore and a Sorcerer Lord on Manticore. But obviously, they weren't able to be stomped or roared, which was good because they're in Hunters of the Heartland. So that actually came into play in this game. Yeah, and then the Furies kind of flew into my backfield and charged into my 10 Free Guild Guard that was sitting on my back right objective. And then I think that was, yeah, I can't remember what it was. But anyway, I unleashed hell with the Hurricanum and killed off 3 Furies on the charge. And he went, oh shit, and ran them away again, as they can do on their War Scroll. So they're super strong. And then finally, turn 4, my Vindictors were able to charge 5 knights were sitting on his back right objective and not kill them immediately with double pile in and fight, but they got there eventually. And then so they burnt that objective and then burnt the middle one. And this game came down to basically me winning by 1 point. So I think it was 22-21 or something like that. So I thought that that game was super frustrating, just because I couldn't do anything with Bellacore, and he seemed to have all the buffs in the one spot. And my Frost Lord, Anointed on Frostheart Phoenix, he got into combat with the general, the Demon Prince, Khorne Demon Prince. He got into combat with the dude on Manticore and with Bellacore all in the same turn and just got his shit kicked in. So that was like him and Bellacore basically just doing monstrous fighting for every single turn. But yeah, that was a bit of a frustrating game, but thankfully somehow I was able to get out on top by a single point. And so this is what the game looked like at the end. So you can see down the bottom, there's the Gur Battle Mage and the Hurricanum. They had both charged into the Sorcerer Lord of Manticore that turn and killed him, which was cool. Took him down from full. He had a 5 up after save. I think I did like 8 or 9 mortals with the Hurricanum, and he didn't save any. And I threw all of my Mortal Wound spells into him. Did an Arcane Bolt, and then the Gur Battle Mage General just rolled his 3 to hit and 3 to wound, and dodge failed his armor save, did 3 wounds with his staff, and then he failed all 3 of his after saves. So yeah, that was a funny way to end the game. And you can see top right, there's the 15 Vindictors. The one that's next to that other objective is actually where the entire unit is. We just didn't move them. And Doggo's still alive in this one, obviously. And then my bottom left, you can see that there are the 10 Chaos Warriors that got teleported over there by the Chaos Sorcerer Lord, who's on the other side of the Chaos Dreadhold. So yeah, this was, and look, this this table shows you what I'm talking about with the thematic terrain. Like the table's got cracks of lava coming through it. He's got craters from G-Dub that are, you know, boiling lava. He's got all the trees had like lava coming out of them in little red spots. And they were just super thematic tables and really, really fun to play on, despite them being Realm of Battle boards. And I think this picture kind of shows that off. So yeah, victory to cities in round 2. So I was 2-0 going into the last game. So round 3, I draw Nagash in Petrifex. I haven't played against Nagash in 3rd edition. I think he's almost like he's a huge problem for Cities of Sigmar, basically. I don't think that there's a real good way to get rid of him because he's on a 2-up armor. Is he on a 2-up armor save? I think he's on a 2-up rerolling 1, something like that. He's just really strong, and with +3 to cast and unbind, like you're not stopping him. He can get off 5 or 6 arcane bolts and then charge into something. So yeah, so his list was Nagash, a Liege Cavalos, who was the general, 2x5 Cavalos Death Riders, 1x20 Mortek Guard, and 1x3 Necropolis Stalkers. So you look at that and you're like, shit, that's not a lot of models and not a lot of wounds. They don't need to, because they bring back 9 wounds a turn, with as long as Nagash is alive, and he shouldn't be dying very quickly. So yeah, I just can't beat Bone Reapers. Like I played, saying that I played Gary, actually, funnily enough, at the end, at the end of, you know, when the world got brought to its knees by COVID, we had one event before all the lockdowns happened, and Gary and I played in that event as well. And I had my Living Cities against his Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and I won that one by an absolute bee's dick. And yeah, so we're now 1-for-1. This game was not even as close as the one that the previous one that we played. But when you have, and this scenario again I don't like, but when you have a midline objective scenario with which you can't remove objectives from the middle to force your opponent to move, like OBR, just move up and just sit on objective and just go, all right, come at me. I don't care. I don't take battle shock. You're doing minimal amounts of wounds every turn. Petrifex is ignoring rend of 1 on everything, and you know, my entire army is rend 1 basically, except for that assassin. Yeah, it was, and oh, holy shit. So I gave all of my opponents on the weekend 2 dice for my Hammerhal ones that I got made, and Gary decided to use them against me, and it was exclusively rolling, like the 2 dice were exclusively rolling 6s. Whenever he rolled them against me, and so I was just like, traitor dice, just absolute pain in the ass. I think I got off 4 spells the entire game, including having the cogs out there. Just the 8 unbinds, a +3 to unbind. He was just rolling higher than me every single time. You know, I was usually on +1, and then, you know, maybe +2 with the Ger Battle Mage. I just couldn't get anything off, and that basically decided the game. So one of the spells I got off was Flaming Weapons turn 1. I think it was because Nagash was out of range, maybe. But yeah, the Frostheart Phoenix did really well. He went basically just into the center, captured one of the objectives, and put weight of wounds on it with him being a monster on the right hand side objective to take it off the Cavalos Death Riders and Nagash that were over there. And then he just went to town on Bone Reapers, and he actually did fairly well. We damaged 3 weapons, you know, and in range of a Hurricane, I'm hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s, and fighting twice. So he did really well. But then the next turn, Nagash cast Protection of Nagash on himself, and then used Damn Terrain to deal mortal wounds to himself. He tried to do it the first turn, rolled 1 wound, and then rolled the 5 up to stop it from going through, so he couldn't actually teleport. But then turn 2, he got it off. He did 3 mortal wounds to Nagash, or maybe did 2, saved 1. He did 1 mortal wound anyway, regardless, and basically teleported over on the board. And so that's the picture that you can see here. So he teleports in his hero phase, then he can move afterwards and give himself +3 to move as well. And so he was basically 3 inches from the back line of my Vindicators and my Castellan. I probably could have zoned out a little bit better with the dog, but to be honest, I wasn't expecting him to go there. I thought he'd go into my Hurricanum and to my handgunners and kind of deal with them, but he decided to go for the Vindictors instead, which is, in hindsight, probably the better choice, because that turn he had 63 mortal wounds. Even though the Vindictors had Mystic Shield and the Lantern on them, they just folded that turn, especially to Nagash. I think he's got a Ren 3 damage 6 weapon, and the Liege Cavalos was behind, and so gave him +1 attack. So yeah, really strong. As I said before, I got maybe 4 spells off the entire game, even though I had on average 8 casts a turn. It was just super frustrating. I just got everything unbound, and by the end I was just like, I'm just not even going to bother rolling spells because they're just going to get unbound, basically. And then to really seal the result of the game, the Alpha objective sat on the left objective for 3 turns in a row. So you can see that this photo is turn 2. So he got it turn 1, moving onto it. I then took it from him in my turn 1 by moving the Vindictors onto it. And then turn 2 and 3, it stayed there. Sorry, round 2 and 3, it stayed there. And so obviously the Vindictors died after Nagash went into them. I couldn't get any other bodies over there, and so I couldn't get the Alpha objective any turn, basically, which was super frustrating. Also in this photo, not shown, is Nagash just shooting the dog with his staff, which was just super rude. I think he did 6 wounds to the poor dog. Poor dog. And then by the end of turn 5, I had nothing left. And as you can see on this one, this is where we were at the end of the game. So I'd basically wiped all of his things. However, Nagash was still remaining, and 5 of the Death Riders were still remaining. And I tried to kill those Death Riders with so much stuff during the course of the game, and just nothing worked. So that's... I had a choice during the game to push my Assassin and Frostheart Phoenix in one direction or the other, and I decided to try and push onto the left-hand objective because it was the primary. And the way that dice kind of worked out, I couldn't kill enough models to actually capture that objective. And the defining point to capture it, I think he had Nagash on it only, and I wiped out everything over on that side. But then the Assassin died to return attacks, I think, from... It was probably the Necropolis Stalkers. And so I had 5 and he had 5, and he retained it. And... so by the end of the game, I just did not care, and I just charged everything, all my wizards into Nagash, and they all just died. So I was just over it by that point, just because I couldn't cast anything. It was a super frustrating game. But that's what OBR do. They are super resilient. And so that was the end of the tournament. So I was 2-1 at the very end, and... yeah, it was quite an interesting day. So, overall thoughts. I initially submitted a list with Gotrek, and then I said to the organizer, Cam, I think I want to be nicer to my opponents and not take Gotrek, because I think he's very strong in the current meta, and I think that if I take him out, then the list will be nicer to play against. And then I came up against Be'lakor and Zench, and then I came up against Be'lakor and Slaves, and then I came up against Nagash and OBR. So no one else is pulling punches. This is a lesson that I have to learn, is that I can't get salty if my opponents bring super strong optimized lists and I'm bringing a less optimized list with the intent of being nice to my opponents. So that's a takeaway that I had from this tournament, is that it's not, if I decide to bring a list that isn't optimized, then that's entirely on me, not on my opponents. And if they absolutely table me because of it, then that is something that I need to deal with internally myself, because it's not my opponent's fault that I didn't bring a super tuned list. But it was definitely a Shark Tank. So, there has been some commentary by me, but by others as well, that we are very firmly in the grasp of the Herohammer meta. And I think I agree with that. monstrous heroes are so powerful in the current edition that I think that hopefully whatever next season is, that they'll swing that back to a different archetype of model. But at the moment, when you can heal them every hero phase, including in your opponents, most of them have after saves or lots of wounds to save. It's just, yeah, it's you need solutions to that, and there aren't a whole lot of fun solutions to that. Anyway, so yeah, I took Gotrek out. He's going back in. Is the point of that rant. Vindictors with a Castellan falling behind them is really good. Their obvious weakness is mortal wounds, and that's always kind of been Stormcast's weakness for those kinds of things. The Gur Battle Mage as a general with Master of Magic, so he gets rerolls. It was there because in practice games I played him and I miscast with him, and it was pretty clutch. So he didn't miscast the entire tournament. I think I re-rolled with Master of Magic once just because I wanted a higher result than a 5. And the Hish Adjutant miscast 3 times during the tournament. So that, you know, it's just one of those things. You take something to mitigate it, and then it doesn't happen. That happens. The Anointed on Frostheart with Arcane Tone and Flaming Weapons. My new favorite unit. 315 points of absolute win. I don't think I'll be taking a game without it. Oh, that's what I forgot to mention from the last game. The only reason he died was because he was fighting against Nagash, and Nagash did Hand of Dust against him, and I chose the wrong hand. 50% chance for just losing my super tanky model, so that's a real positive play experience going up against Nagash. So I wanted to run Handgunners instead of Dark Shards. I think the Dark Shards are better for an extra 10 points per 10 guys. Basically because they always get 2 shots. I know they don't have rend, but they always get 2 shots. They move 6 inches. They're an extra bravery, and they get an extra armor save. So they're a 5 up as opposed to a 6 up. And I think that I'm pretty happy with that. That conclusion is the Dark Shards are better than Handgunners. The freestanding shoot is fine. Like, it's saving a command point, but I think you would just spend the command point anyway, and getting 60 shots with Dark Shards is really strong. I know that Handgunners are also, you know, they've got the rend, they got the +1 to wound, they got a 3 up instead of a 4 up to wound, but I just think that Dark Shards are where it's at, given that you can run and shoot them, and just the volume of attacks you can put out with them is really strong. Yeah, so the only change I'd be making in my list would be to throw Gotrek in, so that I would have Vindictors, Gotrek, and the Flames and the Frostheart Phoenix. And so I think that that's a really strong list. I would obviously be dropping the Assassin because he did absolutely nothing and was just a point sink, basically. And I think I'd drop a mage as well to fit Gotrek in. I don't think you need that many mages in Hammerhal. You just, as long as you got the Gur Battle Mage and you've got the Herohammer, I think that's enough. One of them takes, he has Wild Form, and then the Herohammer has Wings of Fire. I think that's plenty, because they're not really targeting those when you got 3 melee pieces on the table. So yeah, that would be how I changed my list. So going 2-1 was pretty good for my first 3rd edition tournament. It was only 1 day. I think I played against pretty hard lists and pretty decent players, and then I ended up 3rd. So I'm not sure if, I mean, it's a Games Workshop tournament, so I'm sure that soft scores factored into it. My armies are always painted, and they're always painted nicely, so I always get full points on painting. But I don't know, maybe I got over on sports. I was being a bit of a salty bitch in one of the games. But I try to give my opponents fun games, and yeah, hopefully that's what got me into 3rd. So 3rd place with Hammerhal in 3rd edition, and yeah, pretty happy with where the book is, and pretty happy with where the game is at the moment. If you have any thoughts about the list that I played, or how I played it, or what you would have done differently, please comment below. But thanks everyone for watching. Sorry this has been a bit of a long one, but I tend to wax lyrical when I'm by myself and talking about tournaments, because I love tournaments and I love cities. So until next time, I will see you guys then.